Thanks. Hello, everyone. And actually, let me share my camera because it turns out it might be better to look at me as well. Can you see me? I hope you can.
Yes.
Yeah. So, welcome to my living room, and good morning or good evening, depends on where you live. My name is Bartłomiej Piotrowski, and just as Regina said, it's most likely not pronounceable to you, so just feel free to call me Bart, like Bart Simpson. Maybe a little bit less creepy, I hope. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about Flathub, not just about what have we been doing for last year, but also what Flathub is in general. Yeah, a few words about me. I have been Arch Linux developer for past 9 years, making and maintaining a lot of packages. Probably more than anyone have ever wished for. Professionally, I'm working on infrastructure in general, currently on GNOME Foundation. But I'm also helping up guys with Linux App Summit. So there is that. So let's move on. So I assume that most of you know what Flathub is, but let's talk about what Flathub is trying to solve. So let's imagine for a moment that you just wrote an app for Linux. Let's say it's something that is not probably a game changer. I don't know, an app for making a perfect tiramisu or in general cooking recipes. And you are pretty much sure that everything is ready and your app is great. But then after a few months of starting at your GitHub, you realize that no one is using it. So you start looking at various Linux distributions and how to actually put your app in the repositories. So you start, let's say, from Fedora, because that's what you are using daily. After copy-pasting this and that from random documentation and blog posts, you arrive at this point. Very, very easy stuff, right? Everything is obvious, license, summary, bunch of weird sections that run possibly macros, you don't know, but because you copy-pasted this, nobody has time to actually understand every line of this, because lots of this is just common knowledge among package maintainers. So everything is great, your package RPM is ready, and some people are able to install your app, but then someone else comes and asks you for a Debian package. So you have managed to create a package for Fedora, so what can be hard about Debian, right? Well, this is just 2 pages of table of contents for Debian packaging documentation. So after reading all of this and creating a Debian package and Arch Linux package, Manjaro package, and every single other distribution, you realize that all you have been doing for past 9 months is making packages. So you are no longer a developer of software. You are now a package maintainer, and that's what you are doing for most of your time. So that's probably not what you hoped for when you wrote your small tiramisu app, right? So the goal of Flathub is to be place of your application, which is accomplished by using Flatpak. If you have listened to Alex's talk 1 hour ago, I think, then you know more or less what Flatpak does, so I won't be repeating a lot of this. But the general idea is that Flathub is the build and distribution service for your application using Flatpak, given that someone else takes care of all the infrastructure and all the knobs that you would need to care otherwise. This is accomplished by very simple JSON or YAML. So there is very few magic commands involved. So this is a very basic manifest that you could use to build and run a GNU Hello app. This is actually using Flatpak Builder in the background, which is a single command to do all the fancy stuff that Flatpak does under the hood. But the general idea is that it's simple. It's JSON on RAM, just a bunch of lines without any shell scripts or anything else. And yeah, so when you have this and you actually manage to get this on Flathub, then or any other store using Flatpak, then you basically build it once and run everywhere, because Flatpak is portable tool. Then you can use it on any Linux distribution, whether it's Ubuntu, Fedora, or Chrome OS, or Alpine Linux, which is completely different from usual Linux distributions that people are using. Then everything should work just fine. So just so you don't need to actually bother with building your own Linux distribution to build your own app, there is a common runtime called FreeDesktop SDK, which is a base runtime with GTK and all the other base Linux libraries. And on top of this, we have GNOME and KDE runtimes, which are also maintained separately as separate project, although as usually some people are helping out everywhere, which is absolutely great. This way we can ensure that first of all, you as an app maintainer don't need to think about whatever runtime is, and someone else is handling security updates and bug fixes and everything else. However, as an app maintainer, you are not limited to just what runtimes provides, but you can also bundle specific dependencies that only your app needs. So you don't need to care about OpenSSL, but if your application needs libtiramisu, then you are good to go to bundle this. Yeah, and the most important part about Flatpak, and in a way about Flathub, is that Flatpak is not tied to single store. So while Flathub is de facto place to get your app built or get your apps from, then there is also an elementary store on the way, and Fedora also has its own. So Flatpak itself is independent, and Flathub, while obviously again some people work on both stuff, it's not driving Flatpak development. And Flathub itself, on the same note, is completely independent community project with lots of people involved. Some of the companies donating time are Red Hat, Endless, or CodeThink, and also multiple hardware sponsors or services sponsors help out with Flathub, which is Mighty Beasts providing some base servers that are serving the repo. Also Fastly, which does the CDN, or Equinix Metal, which donates all the build infra. There's obviously many more companies helping out either with Flatpak or Flathub or runtimes, or helping out with various services that Flathub is using, which we are all thankful for. But it's not possible that I will remember everyone. So sorry if I forgot about you, and I'm pretty sure we are listed on our website. So this is what Flathub is. Let's talk about what we have been doing or plan to do in the future. So this is a graph of Flathub applications from September. The latest graph is a little bit wrong because we broke the API used to calculate available apps. But the bottom line of this graph is that we have a steady growth ever since Flathub started. And we are currently at 961 applications. And in fact, there's a little bit more because since I created the slides, we have added 2 more. and there's a number of apps available only in Flathub beta for various reasons, like Chrome, but also Chromium, Brave browser, and few more. So we are getting pretty close to 1,000. Whether we will actually get to 1,000 this year, we will see. However, the number of apps doesn't mean much if you have no users. So let's see at something more interesting than just number of the applications. This is the graph of Flathub downloads, which is, well, very unreadable because the traffic differs depending on the available updates, and then it's also non-trivial to calculate when someone's actually installing a new app or just updating it. However, the gist of this trend is that more people are using Flathub since we started, which obviously is a great thing. More, or actually better place to check whether we have more users or not would be CDN provided by Fastly. So here we go. As you can see, the graph is increasingly growing. The black lines are the moments when I was trying to improve something in the configuration, usually breaking something, which is, you can see here, these slows in the graph. This is usually me breaking something. Yeah, but things are pretty stable these days, and yeah, we have only more traffic nowadays. Yeah, and the funny thing about growth is that at some point we just couldn't keep up with the traffic. So at some point our servers decided that we no longer are able to serve all the requests that were coming from the CDN. So as you can see, this is called mislatency in CDN terms. And this growth of mislatency was just causing errors, pretty much meaning that we were unable, or actually you were unable to install new applications or runtimes. So with my infrastructure hat on, the biggest changes here is that we actually work properly these days, and everything works fast when you, for example, try to download something bigger from Flathub. Yeah. The biggest addition this year is Firefox, which has been in the works for like 2 years, I think, with many people involved. So nowadays Firefox is on Flathub, on both Flathub stable and Flathub beta. And it's not maintained by us or some random shady guy who submitted this, but just by Mozilla themselves. So new versions of Firefox are published on the same day when the release happens, and it's actually plugged into Mozilla's automation. So when new, I don't know, Windows installers or Linux targos are uploaded to FTP servers, it's also pushed directly to Flathub. I'm actually using this since February, and it works just great. I literally removed Firefox shipped with Fedora because why wouldn't I? It's Mozilla's Firefox works just fine. There's also a beta version available in Firefox in Flathub beta. So if you are interested in testing new features, then please give it a shot. And in the future, we also plan to ship nicely and developer edition, so you can test basically full life cycle of Firefox with 4 co-installable apps. Yeah, so basically everything is great, right? Graphs are growing, new apps are being submitted and published, and there is nothing to complain about. Yeah, so my opinion, usual opinion, is that everything could be better because I'm from Poland, and if there is a single thing we are good at, it's complaining. So let's have a look at what we plan to improve or what could be improved, but there are no plans yet. So one of the changes you likely hadn't noticed because it's completely hidden stuff is that we have a new backend, which is why we broke graphs of new apps that Andrew can tell you about in the chat. The new backend is written in Python, so this is actually great because more people can contribute. The old one was in Java, and it turns out that most of Java developers are apparently busy with writing enterprise stuff instead of contributing to open source. So that's good news. One of the changes that new backend brought was a new search, which sounds great, but results are pretty terrible. So, for example, if you go to flathub.org right now and type video into the search bar, then you are pretty sure that you will see PTV on the very bottom of the results. So there's a lot of room for improvements, either by, I don't know, switching the tool used for providing search or whatever else. I'm mostly hammering servers and not writing backend services. So I'm always open to hear some suggestions. The other thing is the website. Website hasn't changed much since Flathub exists, which is, again, not a terrible thing because the website itself looks great. However, it could be better. So some folks from the community are working on new website and new design, which will look more like GNOME software or KDE Discover. If you zoom in on the slide, you can actually see the actual address where it is. However, it's obviously not being automatically updated on a new updates or anything like this. This is just a proof of concept how things may look in the future. And on that note, the details of the apps will also look differently. This is more or less how it currently looks like. So a logo, short description, screenshots, longer description, and some additional information and URLs to various websites. The current idea is like this. However, this also brings many questions of what could be also included. So, for example, GNOME software and KDE Discover have access to ODRS, which has some reviews. Then the question is whether we really want to show some random reviews when there is no easy way to tell whether someone reviewed the app on Fedora or Debian or Arch or actually from Flathub. Then we are also wondering how to show console applications because that count of apps from before didn't include them because at the moment we are ignoring existence of CLI apps. And then some applications also have extensions, whether they provide some fancy features for chat or I don't know, plugins for viewing YouTube videos in Totem. That's currently completely not displayed on the website, hurting discoverability of features. Yeah, so obviously we will see. This is all work in progress. I see Michael complaining about screenshots. That happens. Sorry. Yeah, so that's about user-facing part. However, one thing I'm very unhappy about is the general developer experience. So, for example, this is how the submission process looks nowadays. So you need to fork our main Git repository on GitHub, then create new branch from specific branch called new PR, add your manifest there, commit, push, blah, 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 then create a new pull request to that original repository, making sure that we have pressed good button for origin branch, and then you are waiting for the review from me or for other people that are reviewing new submissions. And then when a new build kicks in, it turns out that for some reason you are missing icon files or you are missing meta info file in general, then Arch64 also fails to build. Something else fails to build because you have no network access. Then it turns out that you have left lots of static libraries in your application, meaning that your app is much bigger than it should be, or because you are not very interested in tracking numbers, you forgot that there is a newer runtime available, so you have using the old one, which might be not maintained anymore or for long. So to actually fix that, I'm thinking about preparing some, I don't know, linter, but this is very, very long, very long subject. So our documentation is poor. There's no linter, so we are actually going line by line, looking at the YAML files, doing review phase, and then leaving comments that something is wrong or could be done better. And for submission, that's, again, my slides are not changing. I'm talking still about the same stuff. I will change slide in a minute. Yeah, so we could provide a web UI for easier submission using GitHub API, for example, or maybe just some simple upload form. Yeah, this is basically something that's very open to discussion, and we would love to hear how the ideal process would look like, maybe based on your experiences with Google Play or Apple Store. The other thing is that when you are a maintainer, you could probably use more automation, because at the moment you are pretty much on your own. So when new release is out, which you might not know about, you should bump it, or at some point we will produce a warning that your runtime is unmaintained, but it will be displayed only to users and not to you. So what would be cool is to actually notify maintainers that there are new runtime releases. CVE checker. So when you are bundling your dependencies, something could be checking whether they are outdated or not. This is currently missing. There are various tools that are providing such features, but we are currently not using them at all. And in the results, some people complain that apps are shipping outdated libraries and so on and so on. And the last thing that at least I, as a developer, would personally be interested in would be that when I create a new release on my original repo with the code, then something picks it up and tries to figure out whether it builds on Flathub or not, and then just leaves an open pull request that I can accept, and tada, it's done. So, obviously, being a community open source project, we need help. So this is, again, vast subject. Most important thing, obviously, is that we want new applications. So if there's something that you are using or would like to be using, but your distribution is not packaging this, please submit your app. However, first talk to the applications developers. And this is actually kind of chicken and egg problem, because we technically could be rejecting applications that are not accepted by upstream developers. However, we wouldn't have applications at all then. So doing developer advocacy job is also very important. So poking upstreams why they could be using Flatpak and why it's great. It's very important job. Yeah, as I said before, documentation is also terrible. So if you have any general remarks about documentation or would like to write a proper documentation for us, be much appreciated. And development, of course, because I'm terrible at this, and while you have some people working on that, then it's always nice to hear what could have been done better. And if you are already a maintainer, please reach out to us, because sometimes it's very hard to know what is wrong when you are not outsider. So being here for over 3 years working with Flathub, I take some things for granted. We all do. So if you have any feedback, even very general one, not nothing specific, but just, hey, your documentation sucks, please get in touch. That's gonna be very helpful, even without details. Thank you. I assume there are questions in the shared note. Yeah, my name is Bartłomiej. That L with slash is way in my language. It's pretty crazy. Don't think about this stuff for too long.
Hi, thank you so much. Okay, yeah, thank you for your talk. It was quite engaging on the chat and interesting as well. I see that you started with the first question. Of course, I also want to know how your name is pronounced.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'll just go on to the second question. Are there plans to provide devs who use Flathub to distribute apps to get a report on how many downloads, how many clicks on donate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are plans for almost everything, and we are actually moving slowly towards having a proper statistics page available to anyone. There is a raw data available on the website. I have it somewhere in the slides here. Here in the bottom right corner, it's flathub.org/stats. So this is raw JSON files that you can use to produce a graph or whatever, but we plan to integrate this into the website.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is, how long does it take on average for a project to get reviewed?
So nobody is technically paid on working on Flathub, so it usually takes a day, 2 or 3, but rarely the longer than this. We usually have some feedback, so it's a little bit of ping-pong game until we arrive at some acceptable solution, but it rarely takes longer than a week.
Okay, great. We still have more questions coming up, so I'm just going to do them as fast as I can. So what is the workflow when you already have the Flatpak JSON files in the app's Git repo?
So, yeah, the workflow is pretty much, I have described this in the slide somewhere, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. So you fork the main Flathub repo, add your files there, and then submit this as a pull request. And then eventually we'll create a new repository under Flathub organization on GitHub, where only the manifest should be stored.
Great. So we're on to the 5th question. What is the current project governance?
Yeah, so that's a little bit tricky. We have had a call on governance few months back with GNOME and KDE folks, but a little bit like with any open source project, it's a duocracy. So if someone comes up and does the work, then he's usually the one deciding about something.
Interesting. So I think the last question is going to be, has any projects been removed from Flathub?
From the top of my mind, we have removed an application that Cassidy from Elementary did because it had been submitted without his permission. I don't think anything else has been removed.